The word fail is not a negative word. We say fail, it means first attempt in learning.
First attempt in learning.
So,
That's
right,
good.
if you're not failing, you probably aren't trying.
Welcome to the Love Your Brand podcast. If you're looking for real conversations with real people, you're the right place. Let's go!
All right. No, I didn't mean to impersonate.
That's Matthew McConaughey right
It
there.
totally did.
See? But he sounded good, right?
It sounded
Just
great.
like it.
Oh, thank you guys. Welcome to the Love Your Brand show. We are, it's a blessing today to have Mrs. Rachel Ogden
Good job. Yes.
from Acton Academy. She was born in Sacramento, California area. From age 5, she knew she wanted to be a mom and a teacher. These two goals were accomplished in her 20s and have carried on through her adult life with 30 years of educational experience. Unsatisfied with the traditional education system, and after spending time with Acton Academy, her family's life was turned upside down in a good way. Empowering a hero's journey, open-mindedness, and freedom to pursue your dreams have led her family on the next great adventure, recently moving to Tennessee and opening up their own Acton Academy. Please welcome Rachel Ogden.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, Rachel.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. This is an exciting topic we're going to talk about today. As we were talking a little pre-show, my wife was the first one that kind of introduced me to, your business, what you're going to share with us today. My mind was blown. As we said, I was like, why wasn't this available, where we grew up? So we're excited to dive into that. But Sacramento, that's where you grew up.
Yes, sir.
How long were you there? Tell us a little bit about
Oh,
that.
goodness. Born and raised.
Yeah.
So unless you're asking my age, I'll just say born and
I'm
raised.
not going to say. I'm not going to ask.
I love phone.
I don't mind sharing my age. That doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
Yeah, all my life. And that was another factor as to why we moved to Tennessee was we've been in the same area, like 30 miles of where we were born our whole lives. So why not try something new instead of just staying there?
So how long were you in Sacramento?
Goodness, 45 years.
Okay. Right on. That state has changed a bit in 45 years.
It has changed a lot, yes.
What's the main thing you miss from there?
Being close to the ocean.
Yeah.
I love the ocean. So being landlocked here is,
That's one thing I brought up to Jonathan on our drive up, on our 7.5 hour drive up.
More like 10 and a half.
I asked him, I said, what's the closest ocean, right? I think he said 6 hours away.
Well, I said the Florida Panhandle.
yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah, 30A, as I have found it's called. Yes, and honestly, now being 2 hours of the ocean was amazing, but California oceans are cold,
Right.
rocky. The sand is very gritty. 30A is like Hawaii.
Yeah.
White sand, clear water, warm water.
It's beautiful.
So, even though I'm not 2 hours from the ocean, I can't drive there and back in a day. It's so beautiful. So I am very grateful for that.
I always say California should really be 2 states. Because
Yes.
Northern California, that's totally different topography, landscape, climate, everything in Southern California.
Yes.
And I absolutely love Northern California.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
There's a lot, as you all know, there's a lot of
People in Tennessee from California. And
Yeah.
most of the people I meet are Southern California. And, it's just, like you said, it's a whole other ball game in Northern California.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
As they would say, the state of Jefferson.
Yeah, and Jason mentioned in your bio, you always wanted to be a mom. And
Yes.
How many kids do you have?
I have 2.
Yeah.
Yes. I have 2 of my own children, but I say I have thousands of children.
Yeah.
Yes,
a good way
being
to
in
put it.
education a long time. My husband and I served in ministry for, pretty much ever since we've been married. So 26 years of doing
Awesome.
ministry. So I have a lot of kids.
So your 2 biological children, how old are they?
22 and 19.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
We're in that really fun stage, like young adult stage, It's just like, oh, it's so cool. Going beyond the the years of naps and potty training and navigating all of that. And now we're just like, we're in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one that's about to turn 17.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in the driving phase and he knows everything.
Knows everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Also have a son that's 13.
Okay.
So that's a fun stage as well.
Yes. Right? Middle school. Good times.
And then I have two daughters, 6 and 4. So that's a blessing. So I'm doing it all over again.
Yeah. You got a nice span there. You kind of have like one in each little season there.
Yes, and it keeps me busy because with each one they're different, right?
Yes,
it's like in education.
Mm-hmm.
I firmly believe each child is different when they're learning.
Absolutely.
Interpreting. So I've got to adjust to which one I'm talking to, adapt, like I always say.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for figuring that out now, because sometimes adults don't figure that you actually have to treat your children differently for how they learn until after their children are grown. So
it's true.
Wow. Yeah. I got a head start.
You definitely
do. I can learn from you, man. Made me think of have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Yes.
By Gary Chapman? Yeah, same thing with kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can learn. There's not just one way they feel love or they feel that connection. One of them, let's say you discipline children the exact same way and you send one of them to the room or something, or give them a timeout, whatever your discipline is. This one may be like, heck yeah, I'm getting time away from mom and dad or my brothers and sisters. And this other one is just destroyed because they feel that loneliness. And so it's like I tried to tap into that when my daughter was born and just, all right, how does she feel love? How does she feel connection? And understanding that and seeing the ways where something so trivial to me would like destroy her. And it's like, oh my goodness. And so just learning their learning styles, learning their connection styles, like just to piggyback all of that, like we're all wired differently.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. I learned that myself with R2 because our son is older and he has a little bit more when he was younger, a little bit more of that people pleasing personality.
Yeah.
And so we would just talk to him and correct him with our words very calmly and gently. And he took that so personally, like he was being punished. And then our daughter, you would say things to her and then you'd say them again and then you'd say them a little more sternly, but she wanted to know the why behind everything. And at the time, my husband thought that was disrespectful, right? Because you should just do what I say. And so we learned that no, like honestly, if you just have that open conversation with her and you give her the why so that she understands, then she'll do it. So it took us a while to get there. It sounds so easy and simple, but it was not. But yeah, just in my own 2 children, I learned a lot about how different we all are and how we can perceive the same things so differently.
Wow. I think that's kind of a perfect segue into Acton Academy to where, if we think about our education system, you go in and there's just this formula of, you sit down, you do this, you memorize this, you regurgitate this information, you kind of do what you're told, as opposed to I'm wanting to learn. And it's like I told you, it's just been within the last year that I've learned what Acton Academy was.
Yeah.
But with my daughter, I've always told her, it's like, look, I don't want you to ever believe something just because somebody tells you. I want you to go do the research and make your own conclusion based on information that you perceive.
Yeah.
And, so it's like, because I'm seeing they just tell me the answer. Mm-hmm. Just tell me the answer. And it doesn't really challenge you, kind of a thing.
Right.
So how long have you been in education?
Yeah, gosh, I had to calculate that when I was thinking about the bio. The reality is I started babysitting when I was 10. I had neighbors who had a lot of children, and the mom and the dad really poured into me and then allowed me to pour into their children. So I was able to babysit when I was really young. And then right when I graduated high school, the day I turned 18, I started working at an in-home daycare. So we had 24 children. And it was me. A lot of it was me because since it was in home, she would be kind of in other parts of her homes for a part of the day. So it was really me with 24. And in that season, I did that for 5 years. I learned so much from her and so much about just how to engage children. And I learned a ton.
Wow.
And then that's really started that, right? I was teaching young ones and then just continued, went to college, got early childhood education degree and started working at a private school. And Then we did foster care. So I learned even more in that season because there's a lot of training and that involved. And then found Acton.
So how did you find Acton?
Yeah. So we, the education, as I mentioned, that I had, you are told that this is the best way that kids learn and this is how to engage them. And then you go out into the school system and you work there and you go, why do these two things not match? And myself personally in school, it was very challenging for me. Friends were easy, recess was easy, and crafts were easy. Everything else was very hard. And I just remember feeling like I was not smart. Like I'm a dumb, I can't do this.
Wow.
I don't know how to learn these things. Testing is hard. All of it was hard. So I was seeing that happening with my daughter. And, she's only like,
At what age?
I was going to say about
Okay.
8 or 9 years old
Okay.
at the time. And, her teachers at the private school we were at were phenomenal, loving, beautiful people. But, they're still trying to teach you, right? Private schools are still falling under that same school system. So you're still having to learn your second grade math in second grade and your third grade math in third grade, right? So she's at school all day and coming home and just crying during homework. And I just remember thinking, this is not right. Like in my core, I thought, you have one childhood. Why are our children doing these hours of homework and then told they're behind if they're not at the standard, right? Or the level where they should be. And then if they miss it, then they start the next year behind, right?
Right.
Or they go to like a summer school, which everyone knows, right? Like if your kid goes to summer school, they get this like, oh, well, I'm the dumb kid
Right.
because,
Stigma, yes.
Yeah, that stigma. I don't know how you get away from that in a traditional setting. And so I was really there's got to be another way. I knew homeschooling was not going to be an option for us because my daughter, bless her, she loves to find her own information, like you were mentioning earlier about your daughter. And I thought anything that I try, even if I do it in the most fun way, if it's my idea, she's not going to want to do it. So I'm like, homeschooling is just not going to be the best fit. I don't want our relationship to be rocky. And so I had heard about Acton Academy. And the more I heard about it, I just thought, wow, really? This exists? And so there was one opening in Roseville, California at the time. And I learned more about it. And my husband and I buckled down and said, how in the world are we going to be able to afford this? And as God always does, he provided.
Yeah.
And we put our daughter there starting in her 7th grade school year. And it was literally a game changer.
So, wow, that's so cool. What was the game changer like? Did you see pretty immediate results of some things that started changing?
Well, I mean, yeah, right away, she was just happy. I mean, she went from, just stressed to feeling happy. I could see it in the amount of time she smiled, she laughed. Being able to come home every day and play with her friends was just life-changing for her. And
Wow.
that's just one tiny aspect of what changed for her.
Wow. And you said like, hey, how are we going to afford this? And so I'm assuming the price point is much higher than traditional, public school or even a private school.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on your area.
Sure.
Typically in Acton is going to fall probably in that middle range of what private schools are charging in that area.
Okay.
But for us, I was working at their private school. So my children were going for free.
Oh, wow.
So
That's a
this
big
would have
discount.
been So this would have been the first time that we were actually paying for private education.
Also, prior, you were working at the private school that they were
Correct.
attending. And that's what I was going to ask. You said you spent years with Acton prior to Tennessee. Did you work at Acton?
I did, yes. So I ended up getting hired at the Acton Placer in Roseville.
Wow.
And I developed their Spark program, which is the early studio. So those like pre-reading age So yeah.
So for
Just loved
people
it.
that don't know what Acton is, I mean, you're hearing kind of a little bit how it's different.
Mhm.
What would be your elevator speech to where, in a sentence or two, how is Acton different than everything else out there?
Absolutely. Well, Acton Academy is inspired by Montessori learning, which if you're not familiar with Montessori, that's self-directed learning. And so definitely has a lot. Self-directed learning is one of the main parts of Acton Academy. It's really them driving their education. There's also a really big focus on entrepreneurial mindset. So we don't know that every single person, every hero that comes through the school is going to be an entrepreneur, but there is a mindset that comes with that, which is critical thinking, thinking outside of the box, right? Being able to have good communication skills, being able to try and not be worried about failing. That is a big conversation we have a lot, is the word fail is not a negative word. We say fail, it means first attempt in learning.
First attempt in learning.
So,
That's
right,
good.
if you're not failing, you probably aren't trying is really how it works.
Oh, that's speaking right to me.
Yeah,
I'm getting convicted on that.
Absolutely. So instead of, in traditional education, you do a test, right? And if you don't get the answers correctly, there's the potential that you can get that giant F, right?
Yeah.
Which means you have failed. At Acton, whatever your challenge is, whether it's a writing project, a group project, a math level that you're trying to master, if you have struggles in that process, we will just guide you, ask you questions and say, what's something different that you can do that you haven't tried? Did you check the resource for Khan Academy? Did you take notes when you were watching the video? Is there something that you could teach to another learner that will help you grasp the information better? So we guide them to be able to find ways and solutions for them to try again and then try again and try again.
That's phenomenal.
That's awesome.
I started, I think over this last year, like my daughter, she wants to get everything right. And I think innately, we're all wired that way. We don't want to mess up. And so I'd pick her up from school and she had some kind of test and, hey, Daddy, I got all these right. And I've changed my verbiage over the past year to where I compliment more her effort as opposed to the outcome, the finished result.
Yeah,
and so
awesome.
instead of like, you got them all right, you've worked so hard. I'm so proud of your effort, kind of a thing. And from everything I've seen on Acton, it's kind of like encouraging in that aspect of it to where you're just doing your best. Because I always tell her, I'm like, baby, I don't care if you come home, you get them all right or you're all wrong. If you did your best, that's all that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And just trying. But I've heard a little insider language. I don't know if you picked up on it. She said hero a few times.
Did.
Is that an Acton terminology?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, there's definitely, like you were saying, the stigmas to things, right? So students, children, there's a stigma there there's a less or there's a lording over. And so we believe that every child is a genius. And so if we're going to really believe that, which we truly do, you wouldn't be an actor and owner if you didn't believe that. You need to change that verbiage so that they know that you believe that. So why would we call them student or child? We call them a hero because they truly are. They're the hero of their own journey and of their own story.
Have you seen the kids, like when you call them hero, like do they light up or do you see like a little shift in them?
Yeah, I mean, they're used to it at this point.
Yeah, I didn't know like the first time.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll get, the boys get excited because of course they think superhero, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny to hear them talk about other schools once they've been at an Acton and they start to pick up on, without us even explaining it, they start to pick up on that verbiage does make a difference when you're called a hero and you're in your own hero's journey and you pick up on that growth mindset language, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Did you intentionally wear that t-shirt?
Yep. So
I love it.
Yeah. Can't you see it?
Yes. I need that.
It's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And so, but checking that out, seeing a hero, it's like, to my wife, she created some shirts and put like, empowering words on it, like brave,
awesome,
loved, world changer, all these things. Just goes into like, scripture. Book of James, there's power in our words. You can speak blessing and curses.
Yep.
And it's like, and I affirm my daughter every single day. There's like, we were talking on the drive up yesterday there's certain things to where I'm like speaking to her identity over and
Yeah.
over and over and over again to where she just knows it.
Mhm.
And it's like, if I'm hearing that every day, hero, as opposed to, like she said, student or something else, just this kind of abstract, you're just here to learn, as opposed to, nah, you are a hero. Everybody knows what a hero is. And like
Yeah.
she says, boys, it never changes. Here we are grown men, and still I'm hearing that, like, yeah, I'm a superhero,
Yeah.
I want to be a hero. But that's powerful, because it goes so much more in just teaching them the aspects of learn what the Pythagorean theorem is, learn what the quadratic formula is, learn these aspects. You're teaching them their identity,
Right.
To where if I know who I am when I go out into the world, that's going to affect how I, tackle the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say, like, at the heart of everything, it's the reason why I do it, what you said right there. I remember being, like you read in my bio, I remember being a really young girl, like kindergarten age. And probably because my kindergarten teacher was like the most loving woman on the planet, Mrs. Rome. I don't know where she is, but I just know she was just the sweetest woman ever. And I just remember I wanted to do what she did. And that never went away. Just always wanted to be a teacher, always wanted to be a mom. And my upbringing was not sunshine and rainbows. I did not have any form of growth mindset or finding your identity or any of those kinds of things. So I had to figure all of that out on my own. And for me, empowering young people before they're 18, to me, is the best way to change the world.
Yes.
Because here I am at, almost to 50, and I'm still learning how to choose peace and choose growth mindset and choose these things and not let my upbringing, kind of pull me into that negative thinking. That's something I'm still wrestling with.
Wow.
But what if we did it? What if we spoke into kids' lives and they actually, like you said, found their identity, were empowered when they were young, got to find their gifts, their talents, and then ask them, what do you want to change about the world? And how are you going to do it? If you ask a young person that question over and over and over again, they're going to have answers and they're going to want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what Acton Heroes are doing.
That's so awesome. That's incredible.
Go
ahead, because I lost my train of thought.
What I enjoy about this story, Rachel, is that, you were a part of this facility, right? They hired you and you were teaching this stuff to these kids. And I guess through the power of osmosis, look, it's never too late, right? That's just one word of wisdom. The journey is never, you can always start it. It's never too late.
Yeah.
So I think you teaching this stuff empowered you to say, hey, I can do this. I can move to Tennessee.
Yep.
I'm now a business owner, entrepreneur. I want to open up my own Acton Academy.
Yeah.
So, I think that's powerful in itself, because you got to think of the reach even through the parents as they support their kids going through this journey. They're getting this information as well. So it's like, it's spreading.
Yep.
And I think that's a powerful movement.
Yeah. Two questions. One is about, y'all don't use the word like teacher, right? You're more of a guide.
Right. Correct. Yes. We don't use teachers. We use guide.
It's like the story brand.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Well, and I'll tell you the reason behind that too. Well, not necessarily the reason, but one part of Acton that we haven't mentioned is guides are not allowed to answer questions ever.
Oh, wow.
So if you go
to
any Acton Academy across the world, the adults will not answer questions. So the purpose behind that is that critical thinking piece, right? Is them finding their own answers and wrestling with those questions. If it's really important to them, they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, that's good.
And so what we do also, so that, we're not just being mean, we post resources for them, right? So we have things posted all over the room. And so if that information to their question is available, we'll say, things like, where can you find that information? Or who can you ask to get that question answered?
So it encourages critical thinking for yourself as well as a teamwork approach.
Yes, absolutely.
Where there's time and a place, we need to think for ourselves and not just be told. but a time and a place for the teamwork. So that takes me so the founders, they wrote a book called Courage to Grow.
Yes.
And dude, this book is pretty cool. I want to reference one of the stories in it. You can chime in if I'm getting it wrong. But so the founders of Acton, they wrote this book. And there's this one part, so they're in the class, and it's the part about the whales and the people on the ship.
Yes.
And so they're going down, and there's these whales that are trapped, like in the Arctic Sea, and they can't get out. And then there's a boat of people as well, and they kind of get trapped. So people are coming to save. And so they put it on the kids, like, all right, who are you going to save? Or what are you going to say? How are you going to do it? Kind of a thing. They're like, well, we'll just save both. We'll save the whales and we'll save the people. And so then they throw in a little caveat to it. So the person is kind of leading this story, this fictional story with real choices you have to make.
Yep.
And it says, okay, you can only save one of them, the people or the whales. And so then they go, and it's almost like a jury deliberation is how I see it, to where the jury has to decide 100% on what they're going to do. They go back and forth, deliberating. And so some of these answers, the kids are like, well, there's so many humans on the planet. Like, there's not enough whales. So let's just take the whales.
Yeah.
And then they throw in like another caveat. And before you know it, it's like, well, it's 1,000 people and it's 20 whales. It's endangered whales and there's only 20 left. And they throw all these things. Then the last part of it is like, all right, on the boat is your family. And then that was the one that changed to where they finally agreed, okay, we'll save the people. And so like when I read that, Jody, my wife, sent it to me, and I was reading, I was like, that is so powerful to get those kids in a room. You're not just sitting there, add this, multiply this, do whatever. I mean, there's elements of, I'm not throwing the baby out of the bathwater with our current education system, but that kind of stuff, that's how I want to raise my daughter, to where they're figuring out and they're thinking for themselves and they're coming together, and just to understand and see how things change, to where, hey, before I got all this information, this is what we're going to choose. Once I got this information, this is what we're going to choose. So that part was just so powerful.
Yeah. It was really fun when our daughter and son were attending Acton Placer in California, because our dinner conversation went from, pretty much what happened during the day at school, right? So-and-so said this and did this and blah, 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 blah. And it turned into Socratic discussions. Well, what would you guys think? Well, what if you had to choose? And all of a sudden we're having these, these not necessarily debate, in a sense of debate, but one of the things I love, as you were talking about this, that's a Socratic discussion, right? You have to pick A or B. One of the things I love about it is it's allowing these young learners to disagree with someone in a respectful way. Right? Because if someone says, no, I want to save the whales and this is why, but then the other one's like, no, you need to save the humans and this is why.
Yeah.
They're not fighting at that point. They're just sharing why they believe what they believe.
Healthy debate.
Right. And so can you imagine what the world would be like if we could have more respectful conversations, where I'm sure in this place right here, we don't all agree on everything, but we still love and respect each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's so good. And what better time than now? What more important time than now?
Yes.
You cut on the news or look at anything, and how, if you don't agree with my stance, I mean, there's just venom, ferocity, anger that people, you get on social media, we talked about in some previous episodes, where people are just nasty, just for speaking, whatever it is you want. And again, that's how I'm trying to raise my daughter, with just honoring and respecting other people and their opinion.
Absolutely.
It's not about being right or wrong. It's about treating people with kindness and compassion and honor. And so everything, it sounds like the Acton model. So how long, the founders, what are their names?
Jeff and Laura Sandifer.
Okay. When did they start Acton? When was the first
about
one?
20 years ago now.
Okay.
Yep. And they just started the school because they wanted that kind of education for their own children. So they invited their friends, and they just had this little schoolhouse, thinking that was what they were going to do. When people started taking notice of this different way of education and said, we want to open one of those. So as you'll read in Courage to Grow, they basically, learned how to fly the plane and flew it at the same time.
So is the model, is it like a franchise? You just say, hey, I want to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, they have a pretty rigorous, application process. They want to make sure that you're really, really understanding and bought into, what you're doing at an Acton Academy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So hero and guide.
Yes.
What we're talking about, one of my favorite authors, a marketing guy, Donald Miller. He wrote a book called Story Brand. It's written a lot of books, but his whole concept with business is that like a business, every aspect of a business is just like a Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
And he takes like Star Wars or Tommy Boy, and he can pick the most diabolically opposite looking movies, and they follow the same script.
Yep. We call that the hero's journey.
To where, okay. And he talks about, so there's a hero of a story. Look at every movie. You
Yep.
have the hero. They have a problem,
Yep.
an emotional and a physical problem. The emotional is the one that you have to tap into that introduces them to a guide. And the guide, you know, presents them with a plan. They have authority and credibility and empathy that they express with them. And it goes through the plan, which gives them a call to action and the steps to take.
Yep.
As I'm hearing you, it's like, you know, they're following this Donald Miller story
Oh,
brand
yeah.
script to
Absolutely.
a T, you know, making them the hero. And the guide just affirms them and encourages them. You can do this. You know, you can overcome this. I'm here for you. I'm going to support you. I've already won the day, you know, but you're going to do it because we're not answering questions. You know, what a concept in school, not answering questions. And it makes me think of my daughter. There's certain things like, again, she just wants to get it right. Sometimes there'll be like a little frustration for working on something. I want to challenge her in that. Like, I want you to do some critical thinking. And Daddy, just tell me what it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so how would you encourage that? Like, and sometimes you said with your own daughter, like if you were to say it, you know, she's going to buck the system when she was younger. I don't know how much is just as parents, you know, our kids, and we can push them away. We're the last resource, but somebody else, if you spoke it to my daughter, she'd listen to you. Right. Like, how would you encourage that if that's a struggle? That I have?
Well, one of my favorite quotes by Laura Sandifer is, would you rather be right or would you rather be curious?
Ooh, that makes me think of marriage.
Right?
I mean,
That's good.
Yeah. So, you know, we do advise our Acton Academy parents, you know, you don't need to be guiding your kids at home. If they're already at Acton all day and the adults aren't answering questions, you know, you want that relationship obviously to be strong, but it depends on what they're asking, right? If they're just asking about, why is the sky blue? You know, then maybe you say, well, why do you think the sky is blue?
Yeah.
And if they're at a complete loss, maybe give them some options. Do you think it's because of the reflection of the ocean? Do you think that, you know, and just kind of spark some of that curiosity and see where it goes. Because oftentimes when you ask questions back, they start to think more and more and they think deeper. And then you don't even get to the answer or the conclusion because now they're like, oh, wait a minute. I never thought about that. So you're sparking that curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that model goes across business and entrepreneurship. That's how you guide, you know, people in your organization. You never give them the answer. If they ask questions, you try to guide them. Well, what do you think? Well,
yeah.
What's your approach? You know, I would say 9 out of 10 times. That's my feedback. You know, like, what do you think of this, Jason? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? What do you think of this? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like instilling this into the youth is very encouraging, right? Because I've hired a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people coming through traditional education, through college, through high school even. And the approach is that it's information based.
Yeah.
It's here, I'm going to give you this. I'm not going to have critical thinking. You know, I researched, this is what I found. You tell me, right? I think that's missing a lot in today's
100%.
education.
Yeah, especially now since we all have these little computers in our hands that we can just instantly, even, you know, especially with the addition of AI, right? We can just instantly get a specific answer about something. And I'm guilty of that. You know, I'm like, oh, I need that answer to that question. I go to my AI and I'm like, oh, bam, there it is. There's the answer.
Well, it's funny. That's what we were talking about on the drive up. So Sam over here, you know, he's a Gen Zer. And I mean, grew up with internet, grew up with these resources. You have a question, you just type it in and you get it. With us, you know, we're around the same age to where we didn't have this. And so like to get information, I mean, you sit around with people, you talk, you hear, hey, you want a good marriage? Sit around with somebody that has a successful marriage and hear their insights, as opposed to just, I can get whatever I want right now. That dopamine hit, you know, just instant gratification. And so, I mean, times have changed so much. We were talking on the way up yesterday, the drive as well, how like in marriage, my wife and I recently went to a marriage retreat, and I've been wired to where tell me what to do, Rachel. Just like, let's say, as a husband, spiritual leader of my home kind of thing. Just give me a checklist of what to do and I'll check it off. I'll be excellent and do that. That's not the approach. And so at the retreat, they were like, don't focus on the how, focus on the who. Who do you want to be in those moments? When tension comes up, when disagreement comes up, when curiosity, you said curiosity, they encourage that same thing. Like, be curious with your spouse, be empathetic, try to get in their shoes kind of a thing. So like, even this model is like, this is not just Acton specific. This is across the board. If we look at all of our personal relationships, our professional relationships, how we parent, everything, these are the keys that if we implemented, like the generation that we're pouring into right now, these kids, the trajectory of our future, where we're going to go is what they're getting right now. Yeah. And so I want this thing to boom. How many locations are there currently?
There are about 300 across the globe. Yeah.
Do they have a vision of a certain number or number of kids reached?
I mean, I haven't heard of any. It's more about finding the people who really have that alignment of belief of who these young learners can be. And if they want to go out and do it, that's really what's important. Numbers of heroes, numbers of families, numbers of campuses. That's not where their vision is.
Information is so readily available with AI and with the internet and search. But to understand that it all has a biased reflection. It's all created. Several developers of even AIs has came out and said, hey, it's got a biased reflection. It's all based on sources. So when you have that critical thinking, you've got to be able to decipher sources. Well, if I go to AI, it's pulling from these sources. What do I think about these sources? Let me look at these sources. Do I align with these sources, with their mission, with their vision? Or do I align more with these sources? And not just take that information to be true. Yeah. I think that's an issue. We regurgitate AI and we say that's truth, right? Yep. That's not correct. Yeah. Right. So instilling this in our kids to have that thinking, especially now with all this information and all this knowledge and all this power, letting them decipher what is truth, because you can have a dozen resources talking on one subject matter with a variance of where they're leaning to, and you have to personally decipher and make that decision. Well, I think this is what I believe in. This is what I think is the best route, right? And that's what's been missing. Yeah.
It's really fascinating to listen to the heroes have conversations because our campus, Acton TriStar, is not religious. One of the things we strongly believe in is religious freedom, along with cultural and social, all of those things, right? We want to respect and honor everyone's backgrounds and everyone's beliefs. And another thing that is sorely missing from society today, in my opinion. Right. And so we had a quest one time, and a quest is kind of like a deep dive into a particular subject. Then we do a lot of hands-on learning during that time of the day. And this particular quest was a story of energy. And so it kind of went back into the, beginnings of times, supposedly, of how did we first learn about what energy was and where does energy come from and all of that. And so they got to, try to build a fire with sticks, and they got to do all these like fun hands-on projects. And so that turned into creation versus evolution. And we have heroes on both sides of that. And it's just so fascinating, even heroes who are ages like 5 and 8 having a conversation saying, well, I believe that God created, and well, I believe that, and just listening to them talk back and forth. Even recently, they were having a discussion. These are elementary aged learners. And they were having a discussion about whether or not women should be able to be pastors in a church.
Wow.
And so
elementary age,
yes. So there are some deep conversations that are already being had. And, when they say, well, I think this, well, then that just spawns them to then want to go and think, oh, well, what do I really believe? Or now has my
Exactly.
belief changed? Or, and that's
So
one of the
good.
things we'll do with a Socratic discussion, which is really fun, is at the very beginning, you ask the questions. So let's just use yours for an example. Would you save, the humans or the whales? And so they'll say, we're going to vote with our feet. And so if you think it's the whales, you go to the left side of the room. If you think it's the people, you go to the right side of the room. Then we ask all those questions, right? Those clarifying questions. Then at the end, they vote again. And so you'll pretty much 99.9% of the time, at least one learner, if not a handful of learners, will have changed their opinion. And so if you can imagine, we have Socratic discussions every Wednesday. So there's a lot of
Wow.
topics that are being discussed. Yeah.
That's so
With
good.
elementary
That's
age
amazing.
learners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's like those games, I think for adults, it's just like cards. It's like table topics or something, to where, it's something very similar. Just ask a question and you just sit around and everybody just kind of shares, what their favorite memory is of something or what they believe,
Yeah.
about creation. It just opens, it's so good just to open conversation and to where not just be told this.
Right.
I love that. Do you find most of the people, I want to talk about the curriculum or like what a day looks like, but are most of the people that find Acton, like the parents, entrepreneurs?
Absolutely. Yes. Because when you ask an entrepreneur, how much of what you're doing now and wanting to start your own business did you learn in school?
Yes.
And unfortunately, they say nothing. I learned nothing about entrepreneurship. I had a million amazing ideas, but nobody wanted to hear them. And so when you talk to entrepreneurs, they say they learned from a mentor. They learned from failing. They learned from, they had a lemonade stand and made $200 and thought, woo, this is amazing. I'm going to try something else.
Yeah.
So it's all different ways that they learned that.
Do you know if you'll have statistics that show like how many kids go to college after graduating from Acton versus go start their own business?
Yeah. So, that statistic could be done. It's not something that has been done because Jeff and Laura are very protective over that information because that's not the point.
Sure.
Yeah. So what we always tell our families is whatever your family's journey is, if your hero wants to be a doctor, great. What are the things we need to do while you're at an Acton Academy that will get you to the college that you want to go to?
Yeah.
Or you have a hero who wants to be a farmer, great. What are the internships or the apprenticeships that you can do in middle school and high school that are going to give you that experience and that exposure so that you can network, so that when you're done, all the things to do or where you want to work or how to start your own.
So fantastic. I wish I would have had access to something like this, growing up.
Me too.
Because I went to college after high school and pretty much just because it was told that's what you do after high school.
Right.
Had no direction. I'm a young kid at the time, never did critical thinking stuff like this. Pretty much was an A-B student, I checked everything off, memorized all the things. Went through college, was like, hey, I'll get through college. I'll just find a job. I'll make, peanuts where I won't be able to pay my rent.
Yeah.
And then I'll just, over the course of 20 or 30 years, I'll slowly climb the corporate ladder. That was like my vision.
Yeah.
And when I hear Acton, it's like there's so much intentionality about it. And to where, by the time these kids are 18 years old, they're going to be, I felt like they're going to be so much further than I was at 18.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to say I was stunted, but I just didn't see the opportunities like this to where, like entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
I didn't start that till 10 years ago. And it's like, I wish I would have done that right after.
Yeah. There was a learner that I met. We have an annual owners conference with Acton Academy. And so we just had it recently in Austin, which is where the first Acton opened.
Okay.
And this graduated, they call it launch pad. When you're in high school, they call that the launch pad studio. By the way, studio, not classroom.
Okay. Like that.
So yeah, so she was a graduate, and she it's so amazing listening to these Launchpad heroes share their speeches and talk to you and the questions they ask. I'm actually intimidated by them because they've just grown up in this critical thinking and just great question asking.
Wow.
It's so powerful. I wish I could take that experience and just put it out there for the whole world to see, because it's incredible. But she, in her short time being graduated, she decided that she wanted to go to other Acton Academies around the world and share her story and basically help from someone who's done it and finished it. How can she then go in and inspire these learners? And so she wrote a book. It's on Amazon. It's amazing. And that's what she's already traveled, I think, to 12 different Actons around the world. I think she's like in El Salvador or something right now. And she's just going, she's probably maybe 19. She starts already traveling the world, going to these different Actons and helping inspire these learners while also doing other things. She has a kit that she put together for growth mindset, entrepreneurship for young kids. And so that it can, to help reach those who are not at an Acton Academy. So, I mean, can you imagine? Here she is, right? She's 19 years old. Like, what is she going to accomplish in her life? She's already accomplished. It's incredible.
That's amazing. And y'all do, like, correct me if I'm wrong, like an entrepreneurial fair or something
Correct.
as well?
Yes. Every year we have an annual children's business fair.
Well, walk us through that. What's that like?
Yeah. So when Jeff and Laura first were having the idea of opening a school, it's actually one of their sons' idea to do a children's business fair. So they had one of those before Acton even launched. And so they just invited everyone in the community. And as we do the same. And basically it's the children or heroes, because our heroes also participate in that job, to create a business, and it can be a service or a product, and they develop the whole thing. So we have a pretty lengthy like policies and procedures that we send out to the parents, because we really want it to be child-led. We really want it to come from them, because I mean, it's just like the traditional school projects, right? You can tell the ones where mom and dad did it versus like the second grader did it.
It's so true.
Yeah. And so, so they come up with their business. Our Acton heroes, we do entrepreneurship quests. So we do a deep dive into that. So they learn like profit and loss. They learn, So they learn, awesome. They get a deep dive into that. That's
even like from elementary school?
Yep.
And so if, correct me if I'm wrong here too, you have elementary, middle, and high school, and it's one classroom for each. So elementary is just one room that everybody is in. Middle school is the same.
Correct. Yep. Yeah. We say we're the one room schoolhouse for the 21st century. Yeah. Yeah. So all of our one room schoolhouse for the 21st century.
Yeah. Bringing back Little House on the
Prairie. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Exactly. And instead of there being teachers, we don't need teachers nowadays, because as you had already mentioned, information is at our fingertips. So we don't, back then we had teachers because there weren't enough books, right? The kids didn't know how to read. So how are they going to learn information? So they needed teachers to be able to help with that. Now there's so many amazing online adaptive programs that they can do for their math and their language arts and those kinds of skills. But back to the business fair. So they learn about marketing. They learn about, they get asked questions like, are there other businesses that are like yours? If so, what's going to make yours stand apart from the others? And so we're guiding through all these questions. So our business fair, unfortunately this year we got a huge thunderstorm. So our customers were not as high as we had hoped, but they have such an amazing time. And the feedback that I always get from every customer, family, really adult, I can't believe these kids and how well they are at communicating, how they just look right in your eye. And, they're counting out money, and they're excited about their product, and, they're trying to encourage you to buy it. And they're like, I'm going to go broke. I want to buy everything. Because how do you not, right? Yeah. And so, we had everything from homemade lemonade to bone broth to chapstick and little mini gardens. I mean, just everything under the sun. They were, I mean, honestly, it was like going to a full farmer's market. That
is so cool.
Yeah.
I think introducing this concept, you hear a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they took a different path. They failed a lot. They failed a lot fast, and they learned to grow fast. It's life, pretty much.
Yeah.
They threw themselves into life at an early age or right out of high school. Maybe they didn't do so well, like me. And they found their path. So I feel like this concept, you never want, being a father of four, I never want to send them on my same journey.
Right.
Yeah.
because it was tough. It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
I had to adapt and learn and grow, and it was trials and tribulations. So I enjoy this because we're teaching them the same skills without maybe taking them down that path,
Yeah.
right? So where you don't have to, learn as much, as hard as I did.
Yeah, that's one of Jess'
You know?
quotes too, is to fail cheaply and often. Right? The quicker that you can fail cheaply and often, right? Like you're saying, if a
Absolutely.
young learner is failing, but now they're failing while they're still living with their parents and they have the love and support, it's a whole different ball game than when it's happening when you're 21, right?
And the encouragement of failing, in traditional schools, even my daughter, Haven, she's in a private school, which is a very good school. They'll have a thing where they get in a circle and they'll answer math questions, and it's based on speed. And she'll come home and she'll just be all upset and like, Daddy, I'm just not as fast as the rest of them. And I'm like,
Right.
Baby, it's okay. It's not about being fast,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
That's not the purpose. Now,
Yeah.
it's about knowing, being confident, understanding, right? I don't care if you're the slowest person to respond, right?
Mhm.
Or I want you to be happy. I want you to feel empowered,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you need help, we'll help you. But, kind of that guide
Yeah.
per se.
Well, not to bash the current education system, but I think they're set up for the opportunity for comparison, to where, I, as a kid, I'm doing this, I'm looking over, like you're saying, that kid reads more than I do per minute. That kid is better at math. That kid's already at multiplication. I'm still in addition and subtraction. And just that comparison mindset, which comparison is such a killer. And as adults, it's like, it's so debilitating when you're constantly comparing yourself. Man, they have more success. Man, they're better at this. They have a bigger house, which, I mean, it's just the culture that we're in. And so if we can teach them it from an early enough age, because I had even heard like, from like birth to 8 years old is like the most pivotal time in a child's life, to where the information they take in is preparing them for how they're going to view the world. And so, with kindergarten starting about 5 years old, I mean, that's even 3 years of education, 3 to 4 years of education, like in that kind of model. By 8, to where their brain is still developing and not fully there. Man, that framework that sets them up for all this, because as she's sitting here sharing, it's like, imagine having an elementary kid from Acton on this podcast. That's good at talking, not shy, and just talk to them about the things. Like, I mean, it would be eye opening, because I mean,
They
my
would love
daughter,
it.
and maybe our next road trip out here, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Because my daughter is a little more quiet and reserved until she gets to know you, kind of a thing, and it's not right or wrong. It's just, it is what it is. But I mean, some of these kids, I think the Acton model just breeds confidence, because the more you talk through things and hear, and you're respectful and honoring, you're just confident to where, hey, it's okay if I express my opinion. As we talked about earlier, sometimes people are afraid to express their opinion because they're going to know somebody's going to come over here and bite their head off. So I'm just going to be quiet instead.
Yeah.
And I hear you saying the kids are just like, they just share what they feel is right.
Yeah.
And I explained to Haven there's such a thing as healthy competition. I truly believe that there's healthy competition in sports, even in that game, right? I'm like,
yeah, just don't let your kids win all the time. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help them.
It's like my son. We play basketball, and I never let him win. I'm like, son, you're gonna have to step up your game, right? Because I feel like if I let you win, I'm doing you a dishonor, right? A disservice.
Yeah.
The same thing with my daughter Haven. It's a competition, baby. You win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
That breeds competition. In entrepreneurship, you need to have that edge. If there's a slight edge, not to where you just want to take it all, right?
Yeah.
But there is an edge that competition breeds that I believe entrepreneurs need to gauge in some form or fashion. That you cannot teach.
100%.
Right.
What I did with my daughter when we started playing games, early on, at first, I just let her win, kind of a thing. No, I'm sorry, I had it backwards. At first, I would just play normal. Sometimes I'd win, and she'd be so upset. And then I changed. Before we started the game, I would ask her, I'm like, all right, baby, do you want me to play serious, or do you want me to let you win, kind of a thing?
Yeah.
And sometimes she would say, let me win. And so she wanted to win that. And then some days she'd be like, all right, Daddy, today I want you to play serious. kick her butt, sometimes. And you could see a little disappointment,
Yeah.
but I allowed her to choose, kind of a thing. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it was like, I'm all about just empowering her with choices. And when she was a little kid, it's like you serve her, dinner and you pick the wrong fork and life is over, like, oh my goodness, Daddy, how did you give me this fork instead of that fork? And I would empower her then. It was like, clearly she could barely walk, and it's like, hey baby, which fork would you like? Or something that small.
Yeah.
So we're just constantly trying to get her to choose instead of just give.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you give ownership, right, to anything, let's say, for example, if, you're growing up in your life and your parents just give you everything, right? They give you a car when you're 16 and they pay for your college and they do all of that, right? And then this person goes off and gets their first home and now they're responsible for everything. Like, how are they going to learn how to take care of that stuff if they've never taken care of it before?
So
right.
Good.
And so that's where that ownership piece really comes in at Acton Academy is we're all going to fail. We all know that. Guides fail, owners fail, heroes fail. Right. What do we do with that? We learn. How can I do it better next time? And that healthy competition, as you mentioned, they all know they're all in different places. The interesting thing is because we're in that kind of that one room schoolhouse, the studios are together, is you will have a learner who is, doing some levels of math that are higher than their grade level per se, because we don't even really look at grade levels. But then, you look at their language arts and it's like they're still learning how to spell the word the, right? And so, everyone, that's the beauty of it is every hero is unique and we all have our strengths and we all have our challenges. And so, we have learners who are 6 who are teaching 13-year-old learners about animals. And they know everything there is to know about animals. It's just fascinating. This bird lives in Africa and just incredible. Well, it's because they're passionate about it. So they know a lot about it. Right. Where you have a 13-year-old learner who's a rock star at football and, a 12-year-old learner who really loves football, but hasn't quite got the game down.
Yeah. And
now that 13-year-old learner can teach that 12-year-old learner. And so those strengths can really rise up. And so it's this culture of, it's like a family, really. It's this culture of really honoring that every single person is going to have their strengths and they're going to have their challenges. And if somebody is really good at something that's challenging to you, well, hey, good thing we're friends because now you can help me out.
Oh, man.
Sam, does that sound familiar? I don't know if you heard that, but I'm going through that process right now. And, something that I passed down to Sam, I said, everyone in the team has a strength and weakness. So my goal is to identify that passion and that strength, right? And guide them.
Yep.
And then the people that are weaker in subject matters, or maybe they're just disinterested.
Yeah.
Is how do you get them to coexist and bring together a dynamic, strong team of a lot of strengths?
Yeah.
Right.
Just like you were saying in marriage too, right? If you have one who's an amazing cook, doesn't matter what their gender is, let them cook.
Yeah, my wife is an amazing cook, baby. Thank you so much for looking after me.
Speaking of, there's my wife, kids coming right there.
Oh, nice.
And so as we're cutting out this episode and finishing up, this has been so good. The whole thing, it just makes me think of one quote. I think it was John D. Rockefeller when the education system came up. He said, I don't want a nation of thinkers. I want a nation of doers. And to where the education system that was created, it was just do. I want to be able to produce workers that can't think for themselves, that can just move the needle and productivity and all this stuff.
Yep.
And, it's like, I won't go there. But so often you just kind of flip the script. I would rather be a thinker than a doer because I grew up in that doer mentality. It was like, just tell me the formula again and I can muscle through it. I can work hard. I can check it off kind of a thing. But I was rarely challenged to think.
Yeah.
And if you asked me questions, I was afraid to give my opinion because I was afraid I was going to be wrong. And so as you just shared, I was like a mic drop talking about just the ownership, because it also makes me think of entitlement.
Yeah.
If you're just giving your whole life, then you're out on your own. You're expecting, somebody else to just continue that.
Right.
Versus I have to work hard for it. I have to go after it. I have to think for myself. I have to fail. I have to mess up. I have to learn. Those are the valuable things.
Yeah.
So Rachel, this was so good. So good. You know, there's only so much
you.
you can research and learn about it, but what you shared is like, I mean, my mind's blown here. You know, I want to change some things in my own life now based on this.
That's
So,
awesome. That's really why I do what I do, right? Help people.
yeah. If people, we'll post like your website, you know, in
Great.
the show notes here, you know, for people that are local, and we're here in Nashville, Tennessee area. So, I mean, is there anywhere you want to drive people to or share to people that are local?
Definitely. Our website has a lot of content on it, a lot of great videos, great resources for you to check out what Acton Academy is. So it's just easy. www.actontristar.com.
Awesome.
And if
We also-
someone wants to see if there's one in their area,
Right.
where would that? Do you have a
Yeah.
locator?
Well,
or-
so if you go to just Acton Academy,
okay.
that homepage has a find a school. You can click on that and you can type in your city and bam, there they are.
Beautiful. I'm gonna look myself.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
awesome. Well,
And
Rachel,
then
thank
we're
you
on
so much.
Facebook and Instagram too. So Acton
Facebook.
TriStar.
So actontristar.com, the website,
Yep.
Facebook, Instagram,
Yep.
Acton TriStar as well.
Yep.
Lots of resources, lots of content there.
Absolutely.
Go check it out. Rachel, this has been incredible. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Right.
It's been
See
a
you next
pleasure.
time. Peace.
Bye. Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for listening and joining us on the Love Your Brand podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, share the love.